So, um, so our project is called SALT for Climate, and that's an acronym for sense making, action, and leadership training. And the idea with SALT is that so many, to use integral theory, we could say so many all quadrant solutions do exist, largely in the upper right and the lower right, I would say. And so these human dimensions, being the left-hand quadrants, operate a bit like salt in food, where you never eat a plate of salt, you sprinkle salt into your meal and it catalyzes the flavor. And so by that same token, something about adding these human dimensions in an integrative manner sparks up a greater potential for climate action implementation. And so we've test driven this in various ways. The research I've done is specifically looking at like, what is the implementation gap? Why do these incredible climate action plans fail to gain traction? What is going on there? You know, a lot of my research is qualitative. So I've been doing interviews and focus groups with actors directly in climate action on what's going on. And they're pointing to these more interior aspects of individuals and society as to where the traction, you know, isn't found, or even worse, backlash occurs. So that's maybe more than an elevator pitch, but
yeah. So can we? Yeah, it's interesting. We'll come back to the elevator pitch in a sec. I want to kind of dig into this transformational thesis for a bit. What I hear you saying is something like we're helping with maybe enhance the sense making, but also the social skillfulness of these actors who are engaged in implementation.
Mhm.
And say more about that. What kind of skills are you trying to give them that they don't already have?
Yeah, thank you. We're seeing that climate engagement, and Lisa, jump in if you have anything to add here. We're seeing that climate engagement, so climate communications and engagement, typically gets kind of reduced down to messaging. You know, social marketing may be messaging, you know, and really out of a persuasion model of how do you get these people to see the problem in the way you do and take up the actions that you think they should do. And so we're understanding climate engagement in a more wholesome, fulsome, integral way, where this is about building emotional competencies, social competencies, and what we're calling awareness competencies. So, what are the perspective taking skills that are going on in an audience, which points to stages of development or meaning making stages? What are the emotions present, or what we call climate shadow? In what ways have those strong, more ego dystonic emotions actually provoked kind of a shadow response in the population? So they've pushed climate clear out because of how it's making them feel uncomfortable about some aspect. So what are the skills needed to work with that? And then there definitely are some social competencies on this. You know, how do you actually talk across echo chambers? How do you understand how these climate change discourses operate on individuals and actually shape and guide their and edit their choices that they have available to them? These are all skill sets that no one is teaching. And I mean, I wouldn't say no one, because that's not necessarily gracious. There could be some work being done in this area, but we're wanting to work at a much deeper level than what we see presently available. Let me just think if there's anything else on that.
Well, maybe Gail, I could just add a couple of things. I think what's important about what we're doing is trying to bring it down to the it's like, what are the leadership capacities, not just to make sense of, but actually to engage in the practice in a different way. And so we're not engineers that are trying to capture carbon, you know, like that's being done. But what people aren't doing is shifting the way that climate gets, it's like there's this idea that still exists within a lot of activist circles, that if we just give people the right data, that they're going to change their mind. And we just see that's not true. It doesn't matter what the issue is. People aren't using data. In fact, they might even react against the data because the data,
Yeah.
you know, so we're in this
Overwhelming, or they don't know how to parse
Exactly.
it out, or
yeah, the multiple truths that exist mean that we actually can't rely on a third person objective truth or science even as as something to collectively gather around and move some policies forward. But in the absence of that, what do people need to do? And a lot of times there are, you know, there's the capacity to work across difference, to actually work in polarized spaces, and the capacity to look at themselves. And this is where, like, I think there's a lot of ways in which climate leaders, activists don't understand themselves as part of the problem, and to kind of, or like there's a right wrong kind of dynamic that gets created